Karen chained my moving truck to her mailbox, then called cops claiming I was stealing neighborhood assets. The padlock clicked shut with a metallic snap. Karen Pemberton stood there in her orange HOA vest, arms crossed, blocking my only way out of this nightmare neighborhood. "You're not leaving without my written permission," she shrieked. I tried grabbing the chains. She shoved me backward into the gravel driveway. "These belong to the community now." Karen snatched my house keys from my hand. That's when the rocks started flying. Landscaping stones bounced off the truck windows. Crack. Spiderweb patterns spread across the glass. My driver ducked for cover. "Ma'am, this is insane," I shouted. "I'm calling the police." "You're stealing HOA property." Here's the thing she didn't know. My son Marcus is an FBI agent. And what Karen just did? That's about 6 different federal crimes. What would you do if your HOA president went full psycho? Where are you watching from? Drop your worst HOA nightmare below. My name is Dalton Reed, 58 years old, contractor, and apparently public enemy #1 of Meadowbrook Estates. 2 years ago, cancer took my wife Sarah. This house became a graveyard of memories. Her coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter, her reading glasses on the nightstand. I couldn't breathe here anymore. So I bought a cabin near Lake Hartwell, Sarah's favorite fishing spot. "We'll retire there someday," she used to say, casting into the sunset. Well, someday came without her. Meadowbrook Estates seemed perfect 12 years ago. Upscale suburban development, strict architectural guidelines, HOA that actually maintained property values. My paid-off house should have been my ticket to freedom. Enter Karen Pemberton. Imagine a real estate agent crossed with a prison warden. Karen's ruled our HOA board for 8 years from her corner mansion. She measures grass with rulers, fines people for unauthorized Christmas lights. Once charged Mrs. Samantha $50 for planting yellow marigolds instead of approved white ones. The metallic click of her measuring tape became the neighborhood's most feared sound. 3 weeks before moving day, I submitted proper paperwork. 30 days advance notice. 0 outstanding fees. Everything by the book. Karen rejected it. "Insufficient community impact assessment," she announced at the board meeting. "What does that mean?" I asked. "You need a certified HOA transition consultant." Her shark smile gleamed under fluorescent lights. "The cost?" $2,500. "The consultant?" Her sister Brenda. "This is extortion. This is proper procedure." Click, click, click went her acrylic nails on the clipboard. I refused. Obviously. The revenge started immediately. Orange cones blocked my driveway overnight. Unauthorized relocation zone signs appeared like Halloween decorations. Next came certified letters to my cabin seller. "Mr. Reed is fleeing outstanding debts." Complete lies, but property deals collapse on rumors. Then, Facebook warfare. Dalton Reed is abandoning his responsibilities. What kind of man runs away from commitments? 47 angry reactions. The betrayal tasted like burnt coffee and shame. My son Marcus called that evening. FBI Special Agent Marcus Reed, Financial Crimes Division. "Dad, this sounds like harassment." "Just HOA drama, son. I can handle one middle-aged real estate agent. What she's doing could be federal crimes." I laughed. "It's neighborhood politics, not the mafia. Sometimes there's no difference." Here's what I didn't know. Sarah had been investigating Karen before her diagnosis. Hidden USB drives, bank records, financial irregularities dating back years. My wife died protecting this neighborhood from a predator. HOA presidents cannot unilaterally create new rules without homeowner votes per state nonprofit corporation laws. Always demand actual signed bylaws, not someone's creative interpretation. Moving day arrived despite Karen's sabotage. Professional movers, fully licensed, everything legal. 7 a.m. White truck pulls up. 7:15 a.m. Karen storms out in bathrobe and curlers, screaming about illegal commercial vehicles. "Ma'am, we're in visitor parking," the driver explained patiently. "I need to inspect every box for community property." Community property? I stepped outside. HOA documents, architectural plans, anything belonging to Meadowbrook Estates. The woman actually believed I was stealing paperwork. The desperation in her eyes should have been my first clue she was hiding something massive. That's when she disappeared inside and returned with those chains. Mrs. Samantha watched from her window, shaking her head. Other neighbors pretended not to see. The morning air smelled like fear and fresh mulch from Karen's obsessively maintained garden. I should have recognized the signs. Karen's escalating control, her sister's mysterious consulting business, the way neighbors whispered about missing pool funds and canceled community projects. But grief makes you stupid. I just wanted to escape to my cabin and heal. Karen had other plans. Karen returned 30 minutes later transformed. Gone was the bathrobe-wearing lunatic. In its place stood HOA President Karen Pemberton in full regalia. Orange safety vest, official clipboard, measuring tape hanging from her belt like a gunslinger's weapon. She brought backup. 3 neighbors flanked her like a suburban militia. "Dalton Reed," she announced loud enough for the whole street to hear, "you are in violation of Meadowbrook Estates Community Code Section 47B, unauthorized asset removal." "Section what now?" I pulled out my phone to record. The red recording light made her left eye twitch involuntarily. "You are stealing community property." She pointed dramatically at my mailbox. "That mailbox belongs to the HOA until proper exit procedures are completed." "Karen, that mailbox sits on my property line. I installed it myself 8 years ago." "The numbers on that mailbox were issued by community standards. Those numbers belong to us." The woman was claiming ownership of my house numbers, my actual address. This is completely insane. This is proper procedure. She pulled out plastic zip-tie handcuffs that still had the Amazon packaging residue on them. "I'm making a citizen's arrest for theft of community assets." The moving truck driver stepped back, shaking his head. "Lady, I'm not getting involved in whatever this drama is." "You're aiding and abetting a criminal!" Karen shrieked, her voice cracking like a teenager's. That's when I noticed something interesting about her backup neighbors. They were avoiding eye contact, nervous shuffling. The acrid smell of fear sweat mixing with Karen's overpowering vanilla perfume created a nauseating combination. "Tom," I called to my next-door neighbor, "you really think I'm stealing my own mailbox?" Tom cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, Karen said if I didn't support the HOA position, she'd fine me for my fence height." Suddenly everything clicked. Karen's witnesses weren't supporters. They were victims. "Mrs. Patterson," I addressed the elderly woman cowering behind Karen, "what about you?" "She threatened to report my dog as a noise violation," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "Bella's 12 years old and barely barks anymore." Karen's face flushed crimson. "These people are lying." "No," I said, still recording. "They're finally telling the truth." The third neighbor, young dad named Mike, found his courage. "Karen, this is wrong. You can't force us to lie for you." "Fine," Karen screamed. "I'll handle this myself." She lunged for my house keys. I pulled them back. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for a real estate agent. "These keys contain access to community architectural plans." "They're evidence," I twisted away. "Karen, you're assaulting me on camera." "I'm protecting community assets." The moving driver was filming too now. "Ma'am, I've seen crazy HOA ladies, but this tops them all." He paused, grinning. "Actually, you offered me $200 earlier to accidentally damage his stuff. Told me he was a deadbeat skipping town. Got it all on dash cam, audio and everything." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish gasping for air. That's not... I remembered something my contractor buddy once told me about citizens' arrests. You can only detain someone for felonies you personally witness or misdemeanors involving immediate public safety. Property disputes definitely don't qualify. What Karen was attempting was technically kidnapping under Texas law. I called 911. Karen immediately called 911 too, screaming about theft and assault in community emergencies. While we waited for police, elderly Mrs. Samantha shuffled over from across the street, sweet lady who'd brought me homemade soup after Sarah died. "Dalton," she said quietly, glancing nervously at Karen, "I need to tell you something important." She lowered her voice. "Last month, Karen tried to seize my garden shed, said it violated setback requirements and belonged to the HOA now." "What?" I stopped recording momentarily. "She brought official-looking papers, demanded I sign ownership over to the community. When I refused, she threatened daily fines until I complied. The pieces clicked together like puzzle pieces. Karen wasn't just power hungry. She was systematically stealing property from homeowners using fake HOA authority. "Mrs. Samantha, do you still have those papers?" "In my kitchen drawer." "But Dalton, there's more." Her voice dropped to barely audible. 3 other families. The Johnsons' new deck, the Martinez family's driveway expansion, even old Mr. Frank's workshop behind his house. Karen was running a property theft ring disguised as HOA enforcement. Police sirens wailed through the neighborhood like banshees. 2 squad cars pulled up, their red and blue lights painting the morning scene in alternating colors. Karen immediately switched to victim mode, complete with crocodile tears. "Officers! Thank goodness you're here. This man is stealing community property and his accomplices are threatening violence." Officer Martinez stepped out, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am, what exactly is being stolen?" "His mailbox, his house numbers, secret architectural documents." "Sir," Officer Martinez turned to me with tired eyes, "is this your property?" "Yes, officer. Paid off mortgage, property taxes current, all documentation in order." I handed him my deed, still warm from my back pocket. Karen sputtered like a broken lawnmower. "But the HOA bylaws clearly state—" "Ma'am," Officer Martinez interrupted, "HOA bylaws don't override legal property ownership. You can't steal someone's mailbox." The second officer was examining Karen's zip-tie handcuffs with obvious amusement. "Ma'am, did you attempt to restrain this gentleman?" "I was making a completely legal citizen's arrest." "For what felony did you personally witness?" Dead silence. Karen's brain visibly short-circuited, her mouth opening and closing without sound. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the growing crowd of neighbors. Kids pressed their faces against windows. The metallic taste of adrenaline filled my mouth as I realized this was just the opening act. Karen wasn't done, not even close. The police left with stern warnings for Karen about false reports and harassment. You'd think that would end it. You'd be wrong. At 2 a.m. that night, my doorbell rang. Then again, and again. I stumbled downstairs in my boxers to find Karen on my porch with a clipboard and flashlight, wearing what looked like a security guard uniform from Party City. "Emergency HOA inspection," she announced. "Reports of unauthorized renovations require immediate investigation." "Karen, it's 2 in the morning. Section 23C allows emergency inspections at any hour for safety violations. I'd helped write those bylaws 12 years ago. No such section existed. Get off my property or I'm calling the police again." "I am the authority here," she screamed, loud enough to wake the entire street. Porch lights flickered on like Christmas decorations. She tried pushing past me into my house. I blocked the doorway. "This is breaking and entering, Karen. This is community protection." The smell of stale wine on her breath mixed with that sickly vanilla perfume. The woman was drunk on power and possibly actual alcohol. I slammed the door and called 911. Again. By morning, I had 6 missed calls from the city building inspector. Karen had filed an emergency complaint claiming I'd made unauthorized structural modifications endangering the community. The inspector, a patient man named Rodriguez, arrived at 8 a.m. with his clipboard and measuring tools. "Mr. Reed, I need to investigate reports of unpermitted construction." "What construction?" "Deck modifications, electrical work, plumbing changes." He consulted his notes. The complainant was very specific. I walked him around my property. The deck I'd repaired 3 years ago with proper city permits. The electrical panel updated by licensed contractors in 2019. Everything documented, everything legal. "Sir," Rodriguez said after 20 minutes, "there's nothing here. Your permits are current. This complaint appears to be—" He paused diplomatically. "Frivolous." While Rodriguez was leaving, Karen emerged from her house with what looked like a police report in her hands. "Officers!" she called to empty air. "I need to file additional charges." No officers were present. She was talking to her mailbox. The morning sun glinted off her oversized sunglasses as she marched across the street, waving papers like surrender flags. "Dalton Reed has stolen community assets valued at over $5,000. She'd itemized my supposed thefts. Mailbox, $50. House numbers, $15. Doormat, $25. Garden hose, $30. And somehow my driveway, $4,880. My driveway. She was claiming ownership of my actual driveway. "Karen, that's my property. I paved it myself in 2018. The HOA approved specific materials and dimensions. Any deviations belonged to the community for correction costs. The woman had lost her grip on reality entirely. That afternoon, she escalated again. The moving company called in a panic. "Mr. Reed, we've received a cease and desist letter claiming we're aiding criminal activity. Our insurance company is freaking out." "From who?" "Pemberton Legal Services. They're threatening to sue us for conspiracy to commit theft." Pemberton Legal Services didn't exist. I Googled it. Karen had created a fake law firm using her maiden name and Microsoft Word, but it worked. The moving company wanted out. "Look, we'll honor our contract, but if this gets weirder, we're gone." That evening, I discovered Karen's masterpiece. She'd somehow obtained spare keys to my house, probably from the previous owner, and changed my locks. New deadbolts, new door handles, everything shiny and chrome. A note was taped to my front door. "Property secured pending HOA investigation. Access restricted by Community Safety Protocol 15J. I was locked out of my own house. My neighbor Tom watched from his window as I tried my old keys. He came outside reluctantly. "She told us you'd been evicted for non-payment," he said quietly. "Said the house was under HOA control now." "Tom, I own this house outright. No mortgage, no liens, no debts." That's not what she said. I called a locksmith, $80 to break into my own home. When he finished, I found Karen had been inside. My medicine cabinet was open. My desk drawers searched. She'd gone through my personal belongings like a burglar, but she'd made a crucial mistake. On my kitchen counter sat a manila envelope I'd never seen before. Inside were bank statements for an account I didn't recognize. HOA funds being transferred to something called Community Improvement Solutions, LLC. The same phony company that employed her sister Brenda. Sarah always told me that criminals eventually hang themselves with their own rope. Looks like Karen had just handed me the noose. I photographed everything with my phone, noting timestamps and locations. From my police academy days helping my dad with security work, I remembered that breaking and entering becomes burglary when you steal something, even information. The sweet taste of impending justice filled my mouth as I realized Karen had just committed multiple felonies in a single afternoon. Tomorrow, I'd call Marcus. Karen went nuclear the next morning. I woke up to find a lien notice taped to my front door. Official-looking letterhead, legal terminology, the works. According to this document, I owed $15,000 in back fees and community violations dating to 2019, $15,000 for imaginary crimes. The itemized list was creative fiction, $200 monthly landscape noncompliance fees, $500 quarterly architectural deviation penalties, and my personal favorite, $100 weekly community participation deficiency charges, because I'd missed HOA meetings while caring for my dying wife. I called the county clerk's office. No lien had been filed. Karen was using fake legal documents to terrorize me, but she wasn't done. At noon, my phone rang. Child Protective Services. "Mr. Reed, we've received a report about your son's mental stability affecting his federal employment." My blood turned to ice water. "What report?" "An anonymous tip claiming your son, Marcus Reed, is psychologically unstable and poses a security risk in his FBI position." Karen was attacking my son's career, his security clearance, his entire life. "Ma'am, my son is a decorated federal agent with spotless reviews. We still need to investigate any claims involving federal employees with family members in crisis." The caseworker was professional but firm. Someone would need to interview Marcus about his family situation and mental health status. 20 minutes later, my real estate agent called. "Dalton, I'm getting strange calls about your cabin purchase. Someone claiming you're under federal investigation for fraud. That's complete lies." "I figured, but the seller is nervous. They want additional documentation proving you're not fleeing criminal charges." Karen was systematically destroying every aspect of my life. The cabin deal, my son's career, my reputation. The afternoon brought her masterpiece of malice. Marcus called from D.C., his voice tight with controlled anger. "Dad, I just spent 2 hours with internal affairs." "What happened?" "Someone filed a formal complaint claiming I'm using federal resources for personal vendettas. They have detailed logs of my phone calls to you, my travel plans to visit, even my internet searches about HOA law." The woman had been stalking my son, monitoring a federal agent. "They know the allegations are garbage," Marcus continued, "but I'm officially under review. They've restricted my access to certain databases until the investigation concludes." "Marcus, I'm so sorry." Don't apologize, Dad. Get angry. What she's doing isn't just harassment anymore. It's interference with federal law enforcement. That evening, Karen played her final card. The doorbell rang at 8 p.m. A man in a cheap suit stood on my porch with a briefcase. Dalton Reed? I'm here to serve you with foreclosure papers. Foreclosure? I own this house outright. According to HOA records, you owe substantial fees and penalties. The association is exercising its right to foreclose for non-payment. I examined the documents. They looked official enough to fool most people. Fake court seals, fabricated judge signatures, the works. But the case number format was wrong for our county, and the legal terminology was slightly off. Karen had forged federal foreclosure documents. Sir, I told the process server, these are fake. You're delivering fraudulent legal papers. His confident smile wavered. The lady paid me $50, said it was all legitimate. The lady just made you an accessory to mail fraud. He practically ran back to his car. I photographed everything and called Marcus immediately. Dad, save those documents. What she just did is federal mail fraud, aggravated identity theft for the fake court seals, and wire fraud if she used email or phone to coordinate it. How do you know she used wire communication? Because I've been building a case file. That process server called me today, confused about delivering papers to an FBI agent's father. He gave me Karen's phone number, email address, and payment method. My son had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Marcus, she's destroying your career over this. Dad, she's destroying her life. I ran her information through our fraud databases. Karen Pemberton has similar complaints in 3 other states. She's a serial HOA scammer who moves every few years when people catch on. The puzzle pieces clicked together. Karen wasn't just a power-mad neighbor. She was a professional con artist using HOA positions to steal from communities. There's more, Marcus continued. Those bank records you found? Community Improvement Solutions is registered in Delaware as a shell company. The registered agent is Karen's ex-husband, who's currently serving 5 years for real estate fraud in Arizona. My wife Sarah hadn't just stumbled onto financial irregularities. She'd uncovered a multi-state criminal enterprise. The sweet night air carried the scent of jasmine from Mrs. Samantha's garden as I sat on my porch, processing everything. Karen had made one fatal mistake in her escalating desperation. She'd threatened a federal agent's family. Now it was personal for Marcus, too. Tomorrow, we'd end this. The next morning, Marcus arrived from D.C. with a briefcase and the grim expression of an FBI agent on official business. Dad, we need to go through Sarah's things. All of them. I'd avoided her home office since the funeral. Too many memories. Her reading glasses still sat on the desk where she'd left them 2 years ago. Marcus went straight to her filing cabinet. Mom was methodical about everything. If she found financial irregularities, she documented them. The bottom drawer was locked. I'd never noticed. Where would she hide the key? I thought for a moment, then smiled sadly. Her jewelry box. She always said the most valuable things should be kept together. The tiny key was tucked under her wedding ring. Inside the drawer, we found Sarah's secret investigation. File folders labeled by year, bank statements highlighted in yellow, handwritten notes in her careful script, and at the bottom, a manila envelope marked Karen, Federal Crimes. My hands shook as I opened it. Jesus, Marcus whispered. Sarah had documented everything. Karen's election as HOA president was fraudulent. She'd never actually counted the ballots, just declared herself winner. The real votes showed Mrs. Samantha had won by a landslide. But that was just the beginning. Hidden USB drives contained bank records spanning 6 years. Karen's sister Brenda's consulting business was a shell company with no employees, no office, no legitimate services. It existed solely to launder stolen HOA funds. The numbers were staggering. $127,000 stolen through fake maintenance contracts. Emergency tree removal for trees that didn't exist. Community wellness audits that never happened. Pool maintenance for a pool that was never built. Marcus pulled up Karen's real estate records on his laptop. Dad, look at this. Karen owned 7 properties in our county alone, all purchased with cash in the last 4 years, all bought well below market value from distressed sellers, then flipped for massive profits. She's been laundering HOA money through property investments, Marcus explained. Classic money laundering scheme: steal from the association, buy real estate, sell for clean money. But the worst discovery was in Sarah's handwritten notes. Karen knows I'm investigating. She offered to help with my cancer treatment costs if I stopped asking questions about the finances. When I refused, she said it would be tragic if something happened to interfere with my medical care. My wife had been threatened. Karen had used Sarah's cancer as leverage to protect her criminal enterprise. "There's more," Marcus said grimly. He pulled out a letter from the state attorney general's office, dated 3 months before Sarah's death. Mom filed an official complaint. The state was opening an investigation into HOA fraud when she became too sick to follow through. The letter requested additional documentation and witness statements. Sarah had been building a federal case against Karen when cancer stole her strength. "Look at this." Marcus showed me Karen's property history. "She's done this before. Phoenix, Arizona, 2 HOA fraud convictions, fled before sentencing. Denver, Colorado, embezzlement charges dropped when she disappeared. Tucson, similar pattern." Karen Pemberton was a serial HOA scammer, a professional criminal who targeted suburban communities where people trusted their neighbors. "The cabin you're buying," Marcus continued, "guess who the secret owner is through a shell company?" My stomach dropped. "Karen. She's been playing a long game, Dad. Force you out, buy your property cheap through a straw man, then sell your cabin back to herself at a loss to clean the stolen money." Everything made sense now. Karen's desperate attempts to stop my move weren't about HOA control. They were about protecting a complex money laundering operation that my departure would expose. "Your moving would trigger a financial audit for the property transfer," Marcus explained. "She can't afford scrutiny of the HOA books right now." I held Sarah's investigation files, feeling her presence in the room. My wife had died trying to protect our community from a predator. She'd gathered enough evidence to send Karen to federal prison, but never lived to see justice served. "Mom left us a roadmap," Marcus said softly. "Every document we need to destroy Karen's operation." The morning sunlight streamed through Sarah's office window, illuminating her careful handwriting on the last note in the file. "Find Dalton. Tell him I love him. Make Karen pay. We had our marching orders." Marcus spread Sarah's evidence across my kitchen table like a general planning a war. Bank statements, property records, fake invoices, and shell company documents created a paper mosaic of Karen's crimes. "First, we need more allies," he said, pulling out his phone. "This is bigger than just you and me." Mrs. Samantha knocked on my door 20 minutes later, carrying a plate of fresh cookies and a manila folder thick as a phone book. "I was hoping you'd ask for help," she said, settling into Sarah's favorite chair. "I've been documenting Karen's financial irregularities for 3 years. She opened her folder to reveal spreadsheets that would make a CPA weep with joy. Every HOA transaction since 2019, cross-referenced with actual community improvements, highlighted discrepancies totaling over $200,000. "I'm a retired IRS auditor," Mrs. Samantha explained to Marcus's surprised expression. 42 years chasing tax cheats. Karen's patterns are textbook money laundering." Marcus grinned. "Mrs. Samantha, you just became our star witness." The doorbell rang again. Board Vice President Janet Morrison stood outside with 3 other homeowners I recognized from neighborhood barbecues. "Dalton, we owe you an apology," Janet said. "We should have stopped Karen years ago." They brought their own evidence, fake assessment notices, threats about property violations that didn't exist, stories of Karen demanding cash payments for made-up fines. "She told me my fence was 6 inches too tall," said Tom from next door. "Demanded $500 to avoid daily penalties. I paid her cash rather than fight it." "She claimed my mailbox was the wrong shade of black," added Mike, the young father. $300 for community aesthetic violations." Marcus took notes while Mrs. Samantha calculated totals. Every cash payment, every fake fine, every fraudulent assessment painted a clear picture of systematic extortion. The morning air filled with the sweet smell of Mrs. Samantha's jasmine as we planned our strategy on the back porch. "Here's how federal investigation works," Marcus explained. "We need evidence of interstate activity for federal jurisdiction. Karen's shell companies cross state lines, so we've got that covered." He pulled out a secure laptop. "Mrs. Samantha, your audit shows a pattern of invoice inflation. Same vendors billing the same amounts on the same dates every month. That's classic systematic theft." Whoa. From my contractor days, I knew how to trace business licenses and registrations. Karen's sister Brenda's consulting company had no business license, no employees, no office address. It was a ghost company existing only to launder money. The beauty of financial crimes, Marcus continued, is that criminals always leave paper trails. Every fake invoice, every fraudulent transfer, every shell company registration creates federal evidence. Mrs. Samantha's spreadsheets revealed the full scope. Pool maintenance contracts for a pool that was never built. Tree removal invoices for trees that didn't exist in our community. Emergency roof repairs for the community center that had a brand new roof. Look at this pattern, she pointed to highlighted entries. Every month, exactly $2,847 goes to Community Improvement Solutions. That's not random, it's systematic. The number was specific because it stayed just under the $3,000 threshold that triggers automatic bank reporting requirements. Karen knew enough about financial regulations to structure her thefts to avoid detection. Marcus coordinated with his FBI field office while we gathered additional evidence. Motion-activated cameras captured Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. She'd started patrolling the neighborhood at night, checking for violations that didn't exist. Documentation is everything in federal court, Marcus explained. Every recorded conversation, every photographed document, every time-stamped video becomes evidence. We discovered Karen's real estate empire extended beyond our county. Shell companies in Delaware, property flips in 3 states, a pattern of HOA fraud dating back 8 years and covering dozens of communities. The local news reporter arrived after Tom called the tip line. Channel 7's investigative team had been tracking HOA corruption stories statewide. This could be huge, reporter Sarah Kim explained. We've got similar complaints about Karen Pemberton from communities in Austin and Houston. Your case might be the key to exposing a multi-city fraud ring. Mrs. Samantha's forensic accounting skills proved invaluable. She traced money flows through multiple bank accounts, showing how stolen HOA funds were converted into real estate investments, then resold for clean money. See this transaction pattern? She pointed to her computer screen. Steal from HOA, deposit in Community Improvement Solutions, transfer to Delaware Shell Company, purchase distressed property, renovate with unpaid contractor labor, sell for profit. The contractors Karen stiffed came forward with their own stories, unpaid invoices totaling $47,000, promises of community work that turned into free labor for her personal properties. From my dad's old police connections, I learned that systematic fraud becomes racketeering when it involves multiple victims and crosses state lines. Karen wasn't just a thief, she was running an organized criminal enterprise. As the sun set behind Mrs. Samantha's garden, our strategy was complete. Tomorrow we'd spring the trap that Sarah had spent her final months preparing. Karen's reign of terror was about to end. Karen's desperation reached new heights that week. She knew we were building something, and her response was pure criminal panic. Tuesday night, I caught her breaking into my house again. This time, she wasn't just snooping, she was planting evidence. My security cameras captured everything. Karen, dressed in black like a suburban ninja, jimmying my back door with a credit card. She crept through my kitchen, placing small plastic bags in my garbage disposal and behind my refrigerator. The bags contained white powder that looked suspiciously like cocaine. She was framing me for drug possession. I called the police immediately, but Karen was gone by the time they arrived. The planted drugs were still there, though, and Officer Martinez wasn't amused. "Sir, this appears to be baking soda," he said after field testing the powder. "Someone's playing games." Wednesday brought a new level of sabotage. I woke up to find all 4 tires on the moving truck slashed. Deep, deliberate cuts that made the rubber peel back like orange skin. The acrid smell of fresh rubber filled the morning air. A note was tucked under my windshield wiper. "Thieves don't get to escape justice." The moving company driver was furious. "Mr. Reed, I've had enough. This lady is certifiably insane." "I'll pay for new tires and extra security," I promised. "It's not about money." She offered my dispatcher $5,000 to lose your entire shipment somewhere between here and your cabin. $5,000 to destroy my belongings. Karen was hemorrhaging money trying to stop me. Thursday escalated to federal interference. Marcus called from D.C., his voice tight with controlled fury. "Dad, Karen called my supervisor again. This time she claimed I was using FBI databases to harass private citizens for personal revenge. What did your boss say?" He laughed it off, "But she's creating paperwork." Every false allegation requires an internal affairs file. She's trying to bury me in bureaucratic bullshit. But Karen made a crucial mistake. She called the FBI's public corruption hotline, claiming Marcus was taking bribes from criminals to drop investigations. When you file false reports about federal agents, Marcus explained, it triggers automatic federal investigation. She just committed a felony while trying to frame me for felonies. Friday brought Karen's most desperate gambit yet. She hired what appeared to be a legitimate process server, better dressed than the last guy, actual legal briefcase, professional demeanor. Mr. Reed, I'm serving you with a federal restraining order issued by the U.S. District Court. The documents looked impressively official, embossed seals, judge's signature, case numbers that seemed legitimate. Karen was ordering me to cease all harassment and stalking of her person and property. But I'd learned to check everything. The case number format was wrong for federal court. The judge's name was misspelled. The court address didn't exist. Sir, I told the process server, these are forged federal documents. His professional confidence evaporated. The woman paid me $300, showed me state bar credentials. She doesn't have state bar credentials. You just delivered fake federal court orders. The poor guy went pale. She said you were a dangerous stalker, that this was a protective order. I felt almost sorry for him. Karen was recruiting innocent people as accessories to her federal crimes. Meanwhile, Mrs. Samantha's investigative skills uncovered Karen's bribery attempts throughout the neighborhood. She'd offered the mailman $50 to delay my mail delivery, promised the garbage collectors $100 to accidentally miss my pickup for a month, even tried bribing the local pizza delivery guy to refuse service to my address. The woman was systematically trying to make my life unlivable through petty economic warfare. But her biggest mistake came Saturday morning. Karen called the local FBI field office directly, demanding they arrest Marcus for corruption and abuse of power. She spoke to Agent Williams, Marcus's supervisor, for 27 minutes. The call was recorded, per FBI policy for corruption allegations. In that recording, Karen confessed to gathering evidence of FBI misconduct by photographing federal agents, following government vehicles, and monitoring communications between suspects. She'd just admitted to stalking federal law enforcement officers. Dad, Marcus called after hearing the recording. She handed us a gift. Stalking federal agents is a federal crime. Interfering with federal investigations is another federal crime. She confessed to both on a recorded FBI line. Agent Williams was now personally invested in Karen's case. Nobody threatens his agents' families without consequences. The sweet smell of victory mixed with the morning coffee as I realized Karen had played herself perfectly. Every desperate attempt to frame or intimidate us had created additional federal charges. Her criminal empire was collapsing, and she was burying herself deeper with every panicked move. Sunday would bring the final confrontation. The emergency HOA meeting that would end Karen's reign of terror forever. Justice was 24 hours away. Sunday morning brought Karen's final desperate assault on reality itself. At 6 a.m., she filed a restraining order at the county courthouse, claiming I'd threatened her life during a violent confrontation that never happened. Her sworn affidavit described me attacking her with a crowbar while screaming death threats. Complete fiction, but the judge had to issue a temporary order based on her testimony. By 8 a.m., sheriff's deputies were at my door with official papers. I was legally required to stay 500 feet away from Karen Pemberton until a hearing could determine the facts. Sir, we're just serving papers, Deputy Johnson explained apologetically. The complainant seems intense. Deputy, I have security camera footage proving I was never within 50 feet of her yesterday. Save it for the hearing, sir. Right now, this order is legally binding. Karen had weaponized the court system against me. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the same day as our emergency HOA meeting. She was trying to prevent me from attending my own vindication, but she wasn't done. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Mr. Reed, we've received allegations about your neighbor, Mrs. Samantha's immigration status. My blood boiled. Mrs. Samantha has been a naturalized U.S. citizen for 40 years. We understand that, sir, but anonymous tips require investigation. Someone provided detailed claims about falsified citizenship documents. Karen was attacking Mrs. Samantha's citizenship to silence our star witness. A woman who'd paid taxes and voted in every election since 1984 was being harassed by federal agents because of Karen's racist desperation. The morning air tasted like copper pennies and rage as I realized how low Karen would sink. At 10 a.m., Marcus called with news that made my head spin. Dad, Karen just tried to have me arrested by the Capitol Police. What? She called the FBI headquarters claiming I was planning to use federal resources to attack her at today's HOA meeting, said I was bringing weapons and fellow agents to intimidate civilians. The woman had accused my son of domestic terrorism. The Capitol Police took it seriously until they saw who was making the allegation, Marcus continued. Turns out Karen's been calling federal agencies all week with increasingly bizarre stories about FBI corruption conspiracies. Every agency now had Karen flagged as a frequent false reporter. Law enforcement speak for crazy person who wastes our time. But her most audacious move came at 11 a.m. A convoy of official-looking vehicles pulled up to my house. 3 men in suits with badges approached my door. "Mr. Reed, U.S. Marshal Service, we're here to execute a federal seizure warrant for this property." My heart stopped. They handed me documents claiming my house was being seized as proceeds from criminal activity. According to their paperwork, I was under federal investigation for money laundering and tax evasion. The documents looked legitimate until I examined them closely. The case numbers were wrong. The judge's signature was obviously forged. The court seal was printed, not embossed. "Gentlemen, these are fake federal documents," I said carefully. The lead marshal squinted at his paperwork. "Sir, we were hired by Pemberton Legal Services to execute this seizure. Pemberton Legal Services doesn't exist. You're being used to commit federal crimes." Their confidence evaporated instantly. Real U.S. Marshals don't get hired by private companies. These were process servers Karen had convinced they were executing legitimate federal warrants. "She paid us $1,500, the lead guy admitted. "Showed us what looked like official court orders. She just made you accessories to federal document fraud." They practically ran back to their cars. By noon, Karen's schemes were unraveling faster than she could create them. The restraining order was dismissed when I presented security footage to the judge. ICE agents apologized to Mrs. Samantha after verifying her citizenship documentation. The fake U.S. Marshals reported Karen to actual federal authorities for impersonating court officers. But Karen's final masterstroke was pure desperation. She called a press conference. At 1 p.m., local news crews gathered in front of her house as Karen, dressed in a conservative suit and armed with fake legal documents, announced she was filing federal charges against me, Marcus, Mrs. Samantha, and the corrupt conspiracy trying to destroy our community. "These people are criminals hiding behind false patriotism," she declared to the cameras. "They've threatened my life, corrupted federal agents, and stolen community assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars." Every word was being broadcast live. Every lie was being recorded for posterity. Channel 7's investigative reporter Sarah Kim asked the perfect question. "Mrs. Pemberton, can you provide evidence for these serious allegations?" Karen's eyes gleamed with manic certainty. "I have bank records, witness statements, and federal documentation proving their guilt." She held up Sarah's investigation files, the ones that actually proved Karen's own crimes. These documents show systematic theft, fraud, and corruption spanning multiple years. The woman was confessing to her own crimes on live television while trying to frame us. Marcus watched the broadcast from his hotel room and texted me, "She just handed us a confession on national TV." The trap was set. Karen had publicly committed perjury, document fraud, false reporting, and defamation. Tonight's HOA meeting would be her final performance. Saturday evening, 6 p.m. sharp. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center had never seen anything like it. All 127 homeowners were invited. 89 showed up, a record that shattered our previous attendance of 12 people arguing about Christmas decoration guidelines. Local news crews set up outside like this was election night. Channel 7, Channel 12, even the Spanish-language station sent reporters. Karen's morning press conference had made this the biggest HOA story in Texas history. Inside, folding chairs were arranged in neat rows facing a small stage where Karen had positioned herself behind a podium decorated with official-looking documents. She wore her most expensive business suit and a smile that could cut glass. 3 men in dark suits sat in the back row, observing silently. FBI agents, though most neighbors probably assumed they were reporters. Marcus sat beside me in the front row, his federal credentials visible in his jacket pocket. Mrs. Samantha clutched her manila folder of financial evidence like a lifeline. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, tapping the microphone with manicured nails, "thank you for attending this emergency session to address the criminal conspiracy threatening our community." She launched into a 20-minute presentation about my alleged crimes: theft of community property, corruption of federal agents, conspiracy to defraud the HOA, financial crimes spanning multiple years. Every accusation was projection. Every lie revealed her own guilt. Dalton Reed has stolen over $200,000 from this community, she declared, holding up printouts of bank statements. These documents prove systematic embezzlement designed to fund his lavish lifestyle. The bank statements were real. They showed exactly $200,000 in stolen funds. But the account belonged to Community Improvement Solutions, LLC, Karen's own shell company. She was confessing to her crimes while trying to frame me. Board Vice President Janet Morrison stood up. "Karen, we need to discuss your resignation." "My what?" Karen's confident smile flickered. "The board met yesterday and voted unanimously for your removal as president, effective immediately." "You can't remove me. I have evidence of corruption." "Yes," Janet said calmly. "We've seen your evidence. All of it." That's when Mrs. Samantha stood up, her soft voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "Karen, you offered me $5,000 last week to stop helping Mr. Reed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face went white. That's completely false. I recorded our conversation." Mrs. Samantha pulled out her phone. "Would you like me to play it for everyone?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Marcus rose slowly, his FBI credentials catching the overhead lights. The room fell dead silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Special Agent Marcus Reed, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I'm here in an official capacity." He turned to face Karen directly. "Mrs. Pemberton, you're under federal investigation for multiple felonies including mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and interstate racketeering." Karen tried to run, literally tried to bolt for the exit like a panicked deer, but the FBI agents in the back row were ready. "Karen Pemberton," Agent Williams announced, standing with handcuffs ready, "you're under arrest for federal fraud charges." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the community center like a gunshot. Cameras flashed, neighbors gasped, children pressed their faces against windows outside. "This is a setup," Karen screamed as they led her away. "I'm the victim here. They're the criminals," but her voice was drowned out by something unexpected. Applause. It started with Mrs. Samantha, then spread through the room like wildfire. 89 neighbors giving a standing ovation as their tormentor was finally brought to justice. Agent Williams paused at the door. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Pemberton is facing 23 federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy. The total amount of stolen funds exceeds $347,000. More gasps. Neighbors looked at each other in shock, realizing how massive Karen's theft had been. "The FBI will be coordinating with state authorities to ensure full restitution to the community," he continued. "All of Mrs. Pemberton's assets are being seized under federal forfeiture laws." As Karen was loaded into the FBI vehicle outside, neighbors gathered around my family with apologies and gratitude. "Dalton, we should have listened to you years ago," Tom said, shaking his head. "Sarah tried to warn us," whispered Mrs. Patterson. "We should have believed her." The news crews captured everything. Karen's perp walk, the community's celebration, Marcus explaining federal fraud charges to reporters. But the most powerful moment came when Mrs. Samantha approached the podium. "Sarah Reed died investigating these crimes," she said into the microphone. "She spent her final months gathering evidence to protect all of us. Tonight, we got justice for Sarah." The room erupted in applause again. This time, I felt Sarah's presence like a warm embrace. Outside, red and blue lights painted the evening sky as Karen's criminal empire finally collapsed. Justice had arrived in Meadowbrook Estates 3 months later. I was sipping Sarah's favorite coffee blend on my cabin porch, watching sunrise paint Lake Hartwell in shades of gold and crimson. The moving truck had finally completed its journey. No chains, no drama, no psychotic HOA president claiming ownership of my mailbox. The sweet smell of pine mixed with morning mist as I opened the newspaper to Karen's sentencing headline. "HOA fraud queen gets 8 years federal prison. Karen Pemberton was sentenced to 8 years plus 5 years supervised release." Judge Martinez hadn't been impressed by her tearful performance, especially after prosecutors played recordings of her confessing to crimes while trying to frame federal agents. Mrs. Pemberton, you've victimized dozens of families while holding a position of community trust, the judge had declared. Your actions represent the worst kind of betrayal. Total restitution, $520,000. Every stolen penny returned to homeowners as surprise refund checks. Karen had been excellent at theft, terrible at hiding money. Her sister Brenda received 3 years probation after pleading guilty to conspiracy. The fake consulting business was dissolved, its assets feeding victim compensation funds. Back in Meadowbrook Estates, transformation was remarkable. Mrs. Samantha became treasurer, bringing 4 decades of IRS expertise to financial oversight. The promised community pool finally existed, built with recovered funds from Karen's seized real estate empire. Landscaping improvements. Karen had charged for, but never delivered, were completed using proceeds from her luxury car auctions. Even her beloved Escalade funded neighborhood beautification. Marcus returned to D.C. as the agent who'd cracked a multi-state fraud ring. His case became FBI training material for financial crimes detection. Dad, agents nationwide are studying Karen's patterns, he'd called last week. Your story is helping catch HOA criminals across the country. The ripple effects were extraordinary. Texas passed Sarah's law requiring annual CPA audits for HOAs over $50,000 budgets. Consumer protection hotlines were established for HOA abuse reporting. 12 other states adopted similar legislation after our story sparked national reform. I established the Sarah Reed Memorial Scholarship for Cancer Research, funded by book royalties and speaking fees. The first recipient was a young researcher studying early detection methods. Sarah would have loved knowing her investigation saved both communities and lives. Mrs. Samantha's free financial literacy classes at the community center always start with the same lesson. Trust but verify. If someone demands cash for mysterious violations, call authorities immediately. Documentary producers are featuring our case in a corruption series. Our story inspired copycat investigations in 43 communities as neighbors found courage to challenge their own HOA tyrants. Tom, formerly Karen's intimidated supporter, became our new president. His transparency rules require monthly budget reports and quarterly community meetings. Never again will one person control our neighborhood, he promised. The sweetest justice came last week. Karen was transferred to Arizona Federal Prison to face additional charges for previous HOA scams in Phoenix and Tucson. Prosecutors across 3 states are building a RICO case that could add decades to her sentence. The woman who'd chained my moving truck was facing life imprisonment for systematic community theft. As evening painted the lake in purple twilight, I felt Sarah's presence in the gentle breeze rustling through our favorite fishing spot. Her investigation had protected not just our community but neighborhoods nationwide. Laws were reformed, criminals were caught, justice prevailed. I raised my coffee mug toward the stars emerging overhead. We did it, sweetheart. Your fight changed everything. The warm taste of victory mixed with cool mountain air as I realized Sarah's greatest gift, proving that ordinary people can defeat corrupt systems when they stand together for truth. Her legacy lives on in every reformed HOA law, every protected community, every family spared from financial predators. What's your worst HOA nightmare? Share your story in the comments below. You might be sitting on the next federal case that protects thousands of families. Hit that subscribe button for HOA Stories because we're just getting started exposing corrupt authority, and justice always finds a way when good people refuse to stay silent.